Hello YouTube, I'm Noah from Any River Forge, and today I'm going to be taking this stack of steel and turning it into, well, I haven't made it yet, but I promise you it's going to be cool. Let's go.
All right, here's where we're starting, guys. We've got a piece of Apex Ultra that we're going to use for our core steel, and a nickel shim, pure nickel, on either side of that. And then the jacket on the very outside is going to be our 1084. Should etch nice and dark. I'm hoping that the Apex will as well, but I don't really know. I haven't played with it before. So the goal is to just have a pretty blacked out knife, and then it'll just kind of have a like that silver running through the middle of it, hopefully with some good action on it, but it'll just be pretty blacked out with that little nickel shim. I got to get the steel nice and clean. I'm going to do a sealed billet on this, so all the edges will be welded up, so there won't be any atmosphere in there. But before I do that, I really have to make sure that the steel is as clean as possible before stacking it up. And here's what it looks like after all of that. Obviously, I spent a little bit more time on there, but for the sake of the video, I have sped things up, getting all that steel cleaned up, and now it is ready to weld together. Here's where I'm going to introduce it to my portable sun and get all of those edges sealed up with the welder. Now, into the forge here, I actually have a temperature control on this forge. I've actually been waiting to use the Apex Ultra until I did that. So as you can see here, I can set the temperature, and it has a solenoid that controls the on-off of the propane to keep it pretty accurate as to what temperature you're wanting to forge at. So this is just my first press to kind of get the steel acquainted, and then after that, I'm going to let it soak in the forge for about 10 minutes, and the grain growth that's going to happen while it's soaking in there is what's actually going to help bond all those different types of steel together. This is after the soak, giving it one more good press in there to make sure everything's bonded. And now I'm using some drawing dies. And this is twofold. One, I want to give it some good action. You're going to see that nickel silver shim have a little bit of movement in it. And also, when I first welded up this billet, I made it a little bit smaller than what I'm actually going to need for the final result. So not only is this going to add some action to it, but it's also going to get me to the final dimensions that I want for the end resulting billet. And one more run through the flat dies just to smooth out everything, make sure it's all down to the final dimensions, and clean off any edges that we left from those drawing dies. And here's what our final billet looks like. Now it's time to clean off all that weld. We don't want to see any of that weld either on the spine or especially anywhere near the edge of the knife. All that weld is going to be soft seal, so I'm going to grind all that off and make sure that we're good. Now, unfortunately, with this type of GoMai, you really can't forge this thing to shape. So that billet that I showed you guys, that's now going to get stock removed into the shape of this knife. So I went ahead and made a pattern for it, and we're going to go ahead and copy that pattern onto the billet. I'm going to remove the larger chunks with a bandsaw and then grind away the excess material. I know it seems kind of wasteful, but it's really the best way to go about this process. Did you know that some angel sharks can sit still on the bottom of the ocean for up to 10 days waiting for prey? And when that prey comes along, they can strike at it within a tenth of a second? 1/10. That's pretty crazy. My son Ben has all these fun facts, typically about sharks, but about all different kinds of things. So I think it's pretty neat. Tenth of a second, man. Wow. This tool right here is called a file guide. And essentially, I just need to flatten up where that bolster transition is going to go so that when it comes time to fit a bolster on there, I have a nice flat transition. This thing has carbide faces that are removable. It's from Nordic Edge. I really love their tools, so big fan of their products. As you can see, nice and flat, so when I go to fit up the bolster, won't have any issues there. Here I'm scribing a center line. It's basically to kind of make sure that our edge is centered. So I'm using a Sharpie to mark the edge. You can use Dykem or whatever. I just had a Sharpie handy. And then using a carbide scribe. This scribe holder I got from Spruce Hill Studios. You can check him out on Instagram. He makes these 3D printed guides for these. It's really handy. I use it very often. And you can see there's actually 2 lines there. And so essentially what I'm going to be doing is I'm just grinding a really steep angle to get my center line, and it's just going to be the space in between those two lines so that I know that I'm good and centered. I don't want to grind it to sharp yet. I'm just trying to find the center. I'm going to go ahead and put some preliminary bevels in here before heat treat, just to remove some of the mass. Some of these steels can be shallow hardening, so you really want to make sure that you've got some material removed before you do heat treatment. That, and sometimes they really suck to grind after they're heat treated, so this is going to save me a lot of time later on. Doing a test etch now just to make sure that our core is centered in the material. Sometimes it can get off while forging, things like that. And it gives us a little bit of a sneak peek to see what we can expect later on. Now it is time to pick handle material. Especially on a build like this where I'm just kind of making whatever I want. Nobody's requested a particular type of handle material. I like to wait till I have a good test etch on it and pick a piece of material that I think will fit well with the piece. That right there is some curly maple, and I'm quite indecisive, so I actually changed my mind. You'll see later on, I actually ended up using a piece of koa that I had in that drawer as well. So here I am milling out the slot for the bolster. This is my first time using a mill. I actually recently got this mill, and so it makes this a whole lot easier than drilling holes and using files to connect those and everything. I'm doing a peened texture on the face of it. And now I'm going to go ahead and fit up that. Here's what I like to do. I like to wrap the knife in a little piece of leather to keep it from getting damaged. And then pounding that soft brass down on there actually does a really good job of meeting that surface so it's nice and flush. Going to drill a hole in our block. As you can see, koa, not at all the handle material that I picked out initially. And then that hole isn't quite big enough for the tang. I could make the tang smaller, but I kind of hate to do that. So this is another Nordic edge tool. This is a broach. I'm just going to make that hole slightly taller, and it's going to fit perfectly. Now I'm going to do 3 cycles of grain refinement here. So I'm going to heat the blade up and let it cool down slowly. And that's going to shrink those grains we were talking about earlier during the forging process. Get us ready for quenching. What you're watching now is it's commonly referred to as the dowel method for handle construction. I could have drilled a slot in this just to fit that tang perfectly, but it's a lot easier to drill just a big hole and then cut a dowel in half, because the inside of the handle really doesn't matter too much. It's just going to get glued up the same. And here the knife is being quenched. After all that thermal cycling, it is now ready to be quenched. So we're rapidly cooling the steel from a predetermined temperature, and that is going to create all the good things that we want in the steel to make it hard. It's going to give it a solid edge, but right after quenching, it's going to be very brittle, so it needs to go into the temper. Here it is coming out of that temper. It gets tempered twice for 2 hours at a much, much lower temperature, right around 350, and now it is good to go, fully heat treated. Now I'm going to be grinding those bevels basically to finish. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to grind those till the edge is about 25 thousandths. And then this is a trick that I learned from Salem Straub. He kind of taught me this method. And essentially, I'm just picking about a ½ inch of that bottom edge. And I want to create a convex there. And the reason for that is just to make it easier to slice through food. We don't want to create too big of a convex. But like I said, we're about 25 thousandths just behind the edge. And then I'm going to give it just a slight convex on that last ½ inch, just so that the edges aren't completely flat, and that's just going to help slice through food better, and then also it's going to keep that food from sticking to the side of the blade quite as much. You'll see a lot of different methods for going about that, but this is just a simple way to go about it. All right, here's another cool tool. This is an abrasive stone holder that fits right into a reciprocating saw that I got from KH Daily. KH Daily Knives makes some great tools for knife makers, but unfortunately, it allowed me to find a flaw. And as you can see right there, it's kind of difficult to show on the camera, but there's a couple spots right near the edge that were, I don't know if they were heat damaged or what. It's possible that with the location of my thermocouple in my forge that the steel just got a little bit overheated right there, but it wasn't something that I was happy with on the edge. I almost threw the knife away, let's be honest, but we don't, I mean, it's kind of a stupid thing that knife makers say. It's like, oh, we don't make mistakes, we make smaller knives, but unfortunately, it's pretty true. So, it's a smaller knife now. I got it reground. and then re-hand sand it up to about a 600 grit finish. Now it's time to etch. So first, I'm using some Grime Reaper. It's a cleaning agent made by Baker Forge and Tool. And then in this video, you'll see I'm actually going to dip this thing into coffee. I wasn't really happy with the coffee etch, so I ended up going with some Gator Piss Heavy, which is a super dark etchant also from Baker Forge. Speaking of Baker Forge, this is their new product, Gator Skin. And it protects carbon steels. So if you're familiar with carbon knives, they will rust if you don't take care of them. This Gator Skin just creates a really thin coating over that steel to help protect it, and so you don't have to worry as much about it getting rusty or anything like that. It's a pretty cool product. I changed my mind again. Look, I'm just going to throw the brass bolster away. I found this piece of carbon fiber that I liked better. I felt it matched the knife a little bit better. So, as you can see, I like to make changes. You know, if it doesn't feel right, I'm just going to do something different. So, we're just doing a dry fit up here, just kind of see how everything meshes together. Now, I was going to do kind of a standalone handle construction where I shape the handle and then do the glue up afterwards. But after throwing away the brass bolster, I decided I just go ahead and glue this thing up and do all the handle shaping afterwards. So what you didn't see off camera is I actually put some teeth in that tang so that it grips onto that epoxy real well. A kitchen knife like this doesn't really require any sort of mechanical fastener like a pin or anything like that. So this epoxy is some great stuff. It'll hold together for the life of the knife and probably even longer. I've had to take some off on mistakes, and it is some pretty tough stuff. So every surface gets epoxy on it, gets all glued up. Once again, I've got some leather wrapped around that blade and then a C-clamp put on that, and that's just going to allow me, once this thing is all together, to put another clamp on there to kind of hold it all together without worrying about marring up the side of the blade that we've already got finished, we've already got it etched, we've already got it protected with the gator skin. And some last minute cleanup with some cotton swabs and acetone for all the little drips. On to handle shaping. I'm using some AO 36 grit belts from Phoenix Abrasives here, and these all actually came in the Hustle and Grind belt pack. If you're a listener of the Hustle and Grind podcast, you can get a discount on that pack, and it comes with all the belts that I have used to make this knife. I set my angles here. On the top, I'm doing a 45-degree angle for those facets, and then I think I went with like a 60-degree. I can't remember exactly, because I like to do a shallower angle for the facets on the bottom. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable, and in my opinion, a little more aesthetically pleasing to have that octagonal handle with some different depths on the different angles on the facets. Here I'm just cleaning everything up and making sure everything's all nice and straight at a little bit of a higher grit. This is going to be like a 120. Just to clean up all those facets and make sure that it's all good before I go to hand sanding. Just measuring to make sure everything's all perfectly even there at the end. And everybody's favorite, hand sanding. Aren't you guys glad that I skipped most of the hand sanding in this video? There was so much hand sanding, especially that apex. It's tough stuff. Now that that's all done, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some pelican paste. Not only is that going to make the grain pop really, really well, but it's also going to protect this handle. I love the chatoyance of curly koa wood. It's my absolute favorite handle material. Time for some freaking lasers, man. Last but not least, we got to put the logo on the blade. Sharpening is one of the things that I have kind of gone back and forth between stones and using the belt. This one I actually ended up using the belt a little bit to kind of set the sharpening edge on there, and then I finished it off with this stone and a leather strop to give it a pretty solid edge. wanted to give you guys a little bit of an insight into what my packages look like. I know everybody does things a little bit differently, so I wanted to go ahead and show you what you can expect if you ever order one of my knives in the mail. You got the knife in the zipper pouch there, some stickers and everything, and a tin of pelican paste of your very own to make sure you keep your knife fresh. Well, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Now, if you are here at the end, you're the kind of person I want to hear from. So if there's anything about this video that you liked or didn't like, drop me a comment with some feedback. I've never done a full-length build like this before, so was there too much detail? Was there not enough detail? You know, things like I didn't show me smoothing over the edges to make sure this was comfortable. I didn't show the whole hand sanding process, each grit. Let me know what you thought about that. Also, because I made this knife basically just for this video, it is available. So right when this video drops, this will be on my website. And because you watched all the way to the end, you get 15% off. But you're gonna have to use code APEX15, and that's just gonna be applicable to this knife only. And the link to my website will be in the description. I also have a couple other knives up there for sale if you're interested in anything like that. You can also see my custom order page on my website, as well as the full care instructions for all of my knives. Those are all on my website, so go check that out. I really appreciate that. Until next time, guys, have a good one.